There's an old Greek word, daemon, and a daemon is not the same thing as what we call demons. It's a spirit, and it's like a halfway between God and man. There were many daemons. Even some might consider angels to be them. What happened was, starting around the 2nd century, the idea of there being a war in heaven started to become a thing. And what that really was originally was a depiction of the solar myth. So the sun grows and grows in strength, and then it hits its zenith at the summertime, then it starts to wane, and then those nights get really long, and the days are really short by the wintertime. That idea of there being a push and pull between light and dark in the solar myth started to get glommed onto by church leaders, and they realized that they could really control people, especially unlearned people, through fear by creating this mythology that there's an actual war between light and darkness, and that since there's a celestial hierarchy, there must then be an infernal hierarchy, and so for every angel there must be a demon. And then it just went crazy after that. And there's just books and books and books about all these different angel names, all these different demon names. And then, of course, the magicians that got their hands on that idea, all stemming from this old story of the Golem of Prague, basically, which is a story about a rabbi who created a servitor and breathed the life of God into the servitor by using sacred names and creating that demonic presence to help. Now, King Solomon was supposedly using demons to help carry the stones and things like that, but those were daemons. Those were helpful spirits. They were not servitors in the same way that these sort of nefarious, evil sort of practitioners talk about in the books of demonology. Within human beings, we have different motivations. Sometimes we are motivated by our, quote, lower nature, and sometimes we are motivated by our, quote, higher nature. So the way that the occult understanding of demons is, that I ascribe to anyway, and that many people that on the path do, is that angels are servants of the one, of the one power. Demons are what we do with those powers, or what our response to them when we kind of get things mixed up. What we can do with demons in regards to all of that is healthy, rather than trying to trap them in a triangle and force them to do our bidding, which is what a lot of medieval magic started to do with these ideas of an infernal hierarchy, and all kinds of stories about the trouble that they got into when they personified their darkness, right? But the true demonologists of old, the wise ones, what they were able to do, whether they used the triangle or not, was to bring out specific demonic qualities within themselves so that they could be integrated, so that they could be healed or destroyed, and in that way demonic magic is very positive. But unfortunately, that's not usually the way people talk about it. Usually the way people talk about demonic magic is by they are evoking or calling forth a spirit and forcing it or making deals with it to get certain things in life, to get ahead in life, to get money, to get people, to get sex, to get whatever they need, whatever they feel their needs are, to make some sort of deal with these lower beings, these demonic energies. And there's always a price to pay that's too big for that magician in all of those old stories. And that's really just depicting what we do with ourselves, whether or not we use magic. and that we make deals all the time with those demons within our own minds. We always do that. We always are capable of rationalizing away our weaknesses that way, rather than looking at those forces as being unbalanced energies that need to be integrated and overcome. We instead enlist those powers to tie us even further to those lusts and those desires. You see in these old grimoires, they give names to these demons. And what they oftentimes did was to take old pagan deities and turn them into the demon. Astaroth, Pan, and Astarte. And those weren't demons originally. They were deities. But according to how things work, the gods of the old religion become the demons of the new religion. Now remember, this was a very, very desperate time to be alive. There were lots of things like plagues and famines. They had no electricity. They came to these kinds of practices in order to get their very basic needs met, oftentimes. And to try to superimpose these kinds of practices over our modern needs, sometimes we get into some really interesting problems. And a lot of times the people that work with demons are trying to put a square peg in a round hole, because they don't come to terms with the fact that these ancient practices were built on a lie. These whole lists of demons and things like that they're working with. Yeah, there is some Akashic energy with them, but the whole thing was built upon a lie. It was built upon a way to enslave most common people to believe in fearful ideas, and also to demonize the religions of those who came before. So to me, that's not a very powerful way to work with these entities, because what you're trying to do is personify the weaknesses of human beings to try to get things. So instead of that, the learned magicians of the day would not do that. They would look at these demons as being unbalanced expressions of human existence and do operations in order to reintegrate those parts of themselves, or to release those parts of themselves, to release themselves from the grips of those demonic energies, not trying to make friends with and make deals with and make pacts with and try to get things from the demons. The demons were always seen as shades, as things that were shadowing real absolute principle. Now, we always say, there is no principle of fear. There's only a principle of love. Principle of fear is the attempt to thwart love, is the attempt to shadow that principle of love. And so that's where a lot of this demonology was born out of, that idea. But then it became very anthropomorphized, and just literally all hell broke loose starting around the 2nd century, where these ancient ideas of working with parts of our deeper selves in order to become whole individuals and more powerful and more wise turned into this whole idea of this infernal hierarchy, which doesn't exist. This infernal hierarchy where you can basically call upon different officers of hell to bring about certain things, and of course the church created all of this and then forbade it. Right? Those things didn't exist before the church and before a lot of those church leaders came about. They didn't exist in those forms. So the whole thing is a lie. All of it. All of that whole Satan, the fallen angels, all of that stuff is a big lie that they used to try to retell that solar myth in a way that could cause them to have more power over people through fear. that these powers existed, that this satanic force and this hell and these place of eternal torment and all of these demons existed. And so they were able to be afraid of these demons at all times. And at the same time, many amongst them thought, well, since what do I do? Do I run away from them, or do I try to work with them? Right? But none of them were ever shown that these were parts of themselves. These were just personifications of parts of themselves that they were supposed to overcome, that they were supposed to let go of. If we work with this kind of stuff these days, if we're smart, the only way that it's helpful is if we notice part of ourselves that is responding to the world in a lower way, we can name it as a demon and recognize that we need to overcome it, that's of our own making. We created that, and that in order to overcome it, we need to call upon its angelic counterpart in order to free us from that. That's really the only way that demons are a meaningful and helpful concept. Because if you're trying to use demons as servitors, you're always going to get in trouble. You can't outsmart your own ego. You can't. You can try, but remember, your ego was created by you, and you were created by infinite intelligence, and infinite intelligence is infinite. And so since what we do with our ego is we are creating a pseudo self based on the creative powers that we were endowed with, then trying to outsmart that intelligence using our own surface mind will never do it. It'll never happen because of how brilliant we are. And that includes all of those demonic forces, so-called demonic forces that are inherent in that. Okay? But the good news is none of that's real. None of that really exists. It's just a game we're playing. It's just a silly, stupid game that we're playing with ourselves. We're playing this big game of what if I was separate from God? What if I was separate from my creator? Well, if you're separate from your creator, then it's the only way that you can prove that you're separate from perfection is to be imperfect. All those little entities that we seem to create for ourselves within ourselves, seem to be pretty bad. And it seems to be infinite because of how we are using our own creativity against ourselves. So when it's time for looking at things like demons, don't be afraid because they aren't real. They aren't any more real than any other part of your ego, although they can seem real. But the only reason looking at a demon is helpful is so that you can understand what it is, so that you can ask for that angelic force to come in and lift you out of it. If you look at those old grimoires, the Goetia and things like that, you can look at those demons, if you want to, as what they are, as being parts of ourselves that are unbalanced and that need to be integrated and need to be raised up into the light, but not as individual entities that will be called upon to do your bidding. That's where we get into trouble. Now, a lot of people, you'll find demonologists that do it, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't or that they're wrong. They can do what they will, and there's room for almost anything in the universe, and spirit can use almost anything for a good purpose. But in our system, the way I teach things, we don't do that. We just don't. It's just not a smart idea to call upon a demon, to make a pact with a demon, and to ask that demon or to command that demon to get you things or to do things for you. It's not a smart idea because what you're doing is you're reinforcing the illusion that you need to go to darkness to get your needs met. And that's just an illusion that we have that somehow we can figure things out for ourselves and that there isn't a higher power that can help us. Because that's what going to a demon is. It's saying, well, I'm deciding that I want this, and since I don't think that I can get it by going to my higher self, I'm going to shut out my higher self, and I'm going to get a demon, and I'm going to tell him what to do. I'm going to pay him, and all will be well. And it never seems to work out. it never seems to work out well. There's always a bigger problem on the other side of that. And the problem isn't so much that they called the demon. The problem was that they thought that they knew what was going to make them happy. They thought that they knew what they needed, when in reality, those angelic forces know what you need to make you happy. And it might be that thing that you think that you need, and it might not. But if you call on the angel, which is the truth, rather than calling on the demon, which is the lie, then you get to where you need to be with no pain, no sorrow, no problems, but you do learn many wonderful lessons on the way. Whereas if you go in through the demonic route, what you get is a lot more darkness, a lot more lies. You may or may not get what you think you wanted, but you definitely won't be happy with it. It will not bring happiness because you're looking to the wrong place. You're looking to darkness to try to lead you out of darkness rather than looking to the light to dispel the darkness. And again, we're not saying that the darkness is bad. The whole idea that the darkness is evil is the problem, because that's where all of this stuff was born out of. That the darkness is evil. It must be, but that's just an inherent fear in all of human beings, is the fear of darkness, fear of the dark. And so the idea that we're cursing the darkness in order to find our way through life is where that whole idea of demonology was born out of. So you can, if you want to, you can look at these demons and understand that there is a branch of demonology. We call it dark magic. That is sort of like an ancient version of psychotherapy, where you're pulling things up from you that are causing you problems and bringing them to the light to be dispelled. Now that's a beautiful thing to do, is to turn and face your demons and bring them to the light in order for them to be dispelled and healed, rather than turning to your demons, containing them, acting like they're not yours, but something that exists off in the aether somewhere, calling it up, giving it instructions, making a deal and a pact with it, and tying yourself to this idea of this external spirit. And then what you're doing is you're compounding illusion with illusion on top of illusion. So it's not a practice that I recommend. The story of Rumpelstiltskin, that was another kind of demonic story where she needed help. And but she didn't call on the Rumpelstiltskin. Rumpelstiltskin just showed up because she was going to get killed if she didn't, spin this straw into gold. And so he shows up and says, "I'll help you. What'll you pay?" And she says, "Oh, I'll give you my ring. I'll give you, I don't remember what else she had. She had another thing when he came the next time. Well, the third time he came to help her. She didn't have anything. So he said, "Well, how about your firstborn child?" And she said, "Okay, whatever," because she thought that he'll forget about it or something. Well, then she became the queen, because she'd done so well for this king by spinning straw into gold, thanks to her dad, who made up the story to begin with. And so she was freed from that prison. She was able to become the queen. And then of course Rumpelstiltskin comes calling and says, "I want your kid." And she said, No, there's got to be another way. Well, what did he say? "If you can guess my name, then you will be freed from this. If you will guess my name, you will be freed from this." Well, then there was a whole story about how somebody spied on him, and he was so arrogant. He was like, "She'll never know. My name is Rumpelstiltskin. Ha, 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 ha." And he comes back and reports that to the queen, and the queen says, "Ha, ha, 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 your name's Rumpelstiltskin," and the whole thing's over. But that shows you how you can deal with these demons. If you know their name, then you have all power over them and they must disappear. Well, what does name mean in all ancient literature? Name means the nature of it, not Balthazar. Who cares that there's some ancient name Balthazar? You can say that name over and over and again, and it doesn't mean anything. But if you understand the envy, the name of this demon is envy. That's the nature of it, right? So if Balthazar is the demon of envy for you, then that has some power. But the only power that has is then you can invite that angelic force to come in and say, "I need release from this envy. I need release from this greed. I need release from this fear. I need release from whatever it is, whatever those demonic forces are that you are finding in yourself. That's why you need to know the name of a demon. Once you know the demon's name, you have power over it. But remember, it's not some secret, arcane name that we're talking about here. We're talking about the true nature of the demon and where that demon lives in you, right? And you can find it by knowing its name, but the name means its nature. And so you don't need to be well learned in the Goetia in order to use this. You don't have to know any of those arcane names of those demons in order to use this. All you have to do is know the nature of the demon within you that you're trying to integrate, that you're trying to dissolve. And the way you do that is by naming it, by finding its name. What is its true nature? And then you can even ask yourself, where does this come from? Where did I learn about this? Why am I being so greedy? Why am I being so greedy? Well, because I'm afraid. Okay, so then you got another demon. You got two demons there. You got greed and you got fear. Okay, and so then when you call those that angelic power in to help you, you have all power over those demons because you know you've got greed, you know you've got fear. Things aren't just arbitrarily happening to you now because you have you know where those demons are, who they are, and then you can eradicate them. You can vanquish them. And that's what the true power of a magician is with demons, is the ability to vanquish them, not the ability to go and enlist them and enroll them and play with them. Thank you so much for joining me today. I can't wait to work with you again. And until that time, blessed be.